This meeting is being recorded.
Peter, let's wait a little bit. Let's wait a little bit. I'll say when we can wait with the recording. So Andrew's with us.
What's going on? And she said, Bob was laying on the floor in the letters. And she tries to investigate what's going on. Knows it's about Thomas. It's a shock of her life. I went inside to see if I could help her. I watched his chest did move.
We'll start, friends, in just a minute. So welcome, Darlene. Okay, let us begin. Let me mention who's here for Steve, who's on the phone. It's Queen Mother and Andrew Williams, Fito, myself, Darlene, and that's where we are at the moment.
You have a background, Stuart. I don't know. Your other device is turned on.
You're talking about my computer?
Maybe.
Well, I'm not able to get it going, so we'll just.
So when you're talking, we have a feedback.
Okay, hang on a moment. Queen Mother, do you know how to put your computer on? Let me just show you something here. There's a way that one can. Do we have any feedback? No, we still have feedback.
Yes, you can move it another place.
Say again. Queen Mother, are you? I think I'll just look over your shoulder, man.
Wait, I move?
No, stay there. Please stay there. I'm going to close this down.
And you get that good now.
Are you able to get to the screen?
And then you get that to it now.
It's interesting you're picking up. I think you want to go okay there. And then we see. No, no, that's fine. You can keep it right there. Can you hear us?
Mhm.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Closer.
I'm going to leave on my phone. Can you hear us now?
Yes, great.
Okay. Okay. Grandmother, you can put that right in your lap. I don't want you to, I don't want you to be inconvenienced. So let us begin, friends, and sorry for the technical
Stuart.
problems here.
Stuart, can you hear me? Hello, Queen Mother. Can you hear me, Stuart?
Yes.
I can broadcast this. Vito only has to allow me to be a host for the 5 minutes. When I start broadcasting it, I can turn it back over to him. So would you like to broadcast this or not?
Let us do that. Yes.
So
Yep,
Vito,
that's fine.
you can again just briefly make me host. I'll then be able to begin to broadcast it to our Facebook page.
Try to see if you can now.
Well, let's see here.
That's fine.
I don't yet have the controls.
You don't have the control.
Thank you for your patience. Oh no, no, Fido, you have made the you've made the AI the co-host, but you need
Yes,
to make me host.
you are
Andrew
close.
Williams Jr. Make me
Okay.
host, then I'll return it back to you shortly after I begin to launch the broadcast.
Yes.
So we can.
I said it on this man.
Getting better and better there.
Yeah. Yes. Now you are host.
No, you made the Honorable Andrew Stanton the host, and that's not a real person. Let's see. I don't know. No, that's not me. I'm Andrew
Oh.
Williams Jr. Anyway, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go out and come back in. That'll make me host again. I hope. Let's see.
On Jews fast, it's not you. On Jews fast, it's not you.
Yes, I'm going to have to leave and come back in. But Fido, my
Yes.
Andrew Williams Jr., where you see my photo at, this is what
Yes.
the host. You made the
Okay.
host the AI Phantom, which won't work. I'm going to go out
Okay.
and come back in.
Okay. So you have two accounts.
Well, yeah, I don't know how to. Can you take the host back yourself and then make me the host?
Let me see.
Stuart, I apologize for the conundrum here, but technology is only great when it works.
Yes. Now you are the
Oh,
host.
great, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen, and give me just a moment, Stuart, to do a little homework here. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to begin recording. I'll begin broadcasting.
It's on the ground.
It's okay.
You want
This side.
Okay, just one moment, please. I'm trying to find the right controls.
you should take computer on your lap.
Well, Fido, I may have to turn it back to you. Earlier, I was able to do the broadcasting, but I'm not able to. So, Fido, I'm going to return this back to you as host.
So
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, you're the host.
Okay,
Okay,
friends, sorry.
yes.
Let's
okay.
get these logistics done. Let's get these logistics done prior to the starting of the hour, particularly if we're recording. This isn't the most inspirational recording. So are we set?
Andrew, everything is okay? We can start?
This is my friend book right here, so I can.
Okay, so to make the recording clean, I'm going to go out, Fido, and I'll come back in. I'm going to leave and come back in.
Okay, no problem.
See it there.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
You can turn that light on right behind the door.
Okay, Andrew and Fito, let's get these logistics done before, if we can,
Yes.
before the hour.
Okay, well, Fido, it's up to you to record for the center. That falls in your court.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
The
take a
recording has
moment.
stopped.
Let's take a moment of quiet. Let these complications and logistics fall aside, and then let's enter into the evening. And I'll offer our opening verse. And people can go on mute in the background. Can everybody go on mute? Folks, can people please go on mute? Thank you. Thank you. May our
This meeting is
feelings
being
penetrate-
recorded.
May our feelings penetrate into the center of our hearts and seek in love to unite themselves with human beings seeking the same goals, with spirit beings who, bearing grace, strengthening us from realms of light and illuminating our love, are gazing down upon our earnest, heartfelt striving. So, friends, we are taking up this theme of is our work, is our striving about anthroposophy or Anthroposophia? And I'd just like to invite initial comments from anybody who wishes to offer them of how you understand the distinction between anthroposophy and Anthroposophia. So we'll just start with this, some reflections on this. Might you, Charlene, get us started? How this distinction lives in you?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone, so hopefully you can hear me. And yeah, okay. So anthroposophy is like a way of thinking, a spiritual path, whereas anthroposophia is the being that yeah, is just part of Christ. That whole yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question for me to answer, but anthroposophia is the being, but it's not just a single being. It's like a universal. Right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Language is a little bit limiting for me. Thank you.
You started us off. Thank you, Charlene. Any other comments, friends?
The inner knowledge that one have beyond just these common thoughts. Anthroposophy, a new way of thinking. Anthroposophy being is that which is perception within. Perception within.
Yeah, lovely. Other comments, friends? We got a bit of background noise. Again, if people could go on mute when they're not speaking. Any thoughts, Andrew, from your side? Can you hear us, Andrew? So I'm not hearing Queen Mother. Is everybody else hearing Queen Mother?
I say anthroposophy is a new way of thinking, of thoughts, mental concept, things that is unseen, mental being that inter sight, that sixth sense, that we have. Something that is within.
Yeah, a source. A source. Anthroposophy can be seen as a body of knowledge that has unfolded out of the work of friend Rudolf Steiner. So the various practical applications of the work, and Anthroposophia is the source, which raises the question of, do we relate differently to a body of knowledge than to the inspiration behind that body of knowledge? If there is a being or a spirit, does that shift our way of relating from just a body of knowledge, which we can consider with our intellects? Might I ask, Steve, when we spoke the other day, you referred to this distinction, if you can hear us. anything you can offer. And just to let you know, we are Charlene from Milwaukee, Nikki, Andrew Williams, Darlene, Queen Mother, myself, and Fito.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I think it's important to say that I think that Rudolf Steiner used the term anthroposophy, which had already existed, and but then he developed it further as a discipline, and so I think we've mentioned that the term anthroposophy refers to the wisdom that's inherent in the human being, Anthroposophia, the wisdom of the human being. When Rudolf Steiner brought forth his work, he was trying to bring forth a spiritual science, the science of the spiritual realms of beings, and being able to identify and recognize the currents of the spiritual world, and how it interfaces with the physical earthly world. And so he called his work European Anthroposophical Spiritual Science. It's really important to appreciate that he's developing, he's incarnating in the European culture, and he's having to bring in this task of trying to find an expression for the spiritual world in a modern way, in a way that is suitable to the consciousness of Europeans to begin with. And his destiny brings him there, because he says if he incarnated in America or somewhere else, he would have gone about it differently. And so it had to come as a science, because this European, especially the Germanic and Anglo-Germanic cultures, are oriented in this intellectual, this development of this intellectual faculty and towards knowledge. And he had the requirement to bring it in that context, and then refine it to be truly a reflection of the spiritual world, and not just an abstract language of the natural world, like natural science at that time. So I've always related to the word anthroposophy as the body of the contribution of Rudolf Steiner's life, and all his lectures, everything he brought forth that's been either published or made available. And I can call that whole body of work anthroposophy. Now, I think that others can interpret the word anthroposophy a little bit differently, but this one is a real practical one for me. And it holds up. So that's like, we will study the works of anthroposophy. So we're not able to hear Rudolf Steiner speaking directly, but we will read his lectures, or we will read books that he's written, and we will study that. So he talks about the study of anthroposophy. Well, the cultivation of anthroposophy and the way in which he brought it in such a way that it challenges us in our thinking, in our feeling, in our willing. Our subjective soul powers have to kind of go through an adjustment and think more clearly about what he's bringing, and it's delivered in such a way that it kind of awakens us to exercise these higher form of thinking, feeling, and willing. And at the beginning, we're students, so it doesn't necessarily, it's not yet awakened. And so for a lot of us, it's a lot of work to kind of study anthroposophy at the beginning. And it's also Germanic in a way. And that was true for me. But that effort of working with anthroposophy, well, then that eventually leads us individually, depending on our destiny and our depth of earnest striving, we can begin to awaken to a higher form of thinking, a more imaginative consciousness. We can awaken to a higher form of aesthetic consciousness, which is inspirational. And we can awaken to a deeper form of devotional consciousness, which is intuition. These are terms Steiner gave. So these terms of imagination, inspiration, and intuition, not how we normally use them, but the way Steiner used them, they were already indications of aspects of Anthroposophia. Right? So as our human souls awaken through the to the working within ourselves as students, you might say, of anthroposophy, we begin to awaken, or we come closer and closer to the living nature of Anthroposophia, to the extent that we've awakened these cognitive capacities that from which he derives his insight. That said, I think myself, we could say that Anthroposophia is the realm of the Akashic. Because the Akashic is an ancient term, speaking about the spiritual world that's sort of recorded in a spiritual way that's accessible to those who develop clairvoyance of some kind. And so I think all those things are relevant. The contrast between anthroposophy is really the stuff that is there for us the stuff of Steiner's contributions that have been made available in some form that we can study. I call it anthroposophy. And then Anthroposophia is what arises in our effort to study anthroposophy and make it become fruitful in relationship to our own quest. We become closer to begin to perceive aspects of Anthroposophia, the living spirit, in its many different aspects.
Thank you. And I think, friends, we can think of it in these terms. For those who can imagine that there's really a source of inspiration behind these teachings of anthroposophy, there's a spirit, perhaps connected with the Holy Spirit. The question then becomes, and Queen Mother, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, really anybody's thoughts on this, but you come to mind in particular, Queen Mother, that how do we relate differently to a body of knowledge, which could be about biodynamic agriculture, or about Waldorf education, or about the religious renewal? How do we relate differently when we meet it on that level, as opposed to when we strive to get in touch with a guiding spirit behind it? If that question makes sense, Queen Mother, what would you say the difference between reading a text and getting in touch with the spirit behind the text?
Reading the text is kind of a mental activity that gives you the concept of what you are trying to understand. But if you're with or have the means to have the body that creates that text, that hands-on hand intervention with it, it's much more easier to relate to person than it is person to paper.
Very nice. It's a living relationship with a kind of a being, another being, not just with, in a certain sense, what can become dead words on a page.
But sometimes words on the paper is just ink on paper. And I feel that way about our Constitution at this particular time in life. It doesn't have any power because it's just ink on paper, because those that are within the power are misconstruing it and using it wrong.
Yep. Nikki or Darlene, any comments? You're not as steeped in anthroposophy as some of us, but you are wise to the ways of the world. Any comments on what's been said thus far?
I put my comments in the chat area there. It goes to scripture and 2 Peter. And for this very reason, it sounds like this is what anthroposophy, however you say it, is all about. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love, and it goes on. And I put it in the area. You can read more if you want. Okay. But anyway, if you have a Bible, 2 Peter 1, verse 6, it begins.
Lovely.
It sounds like that's where Steiner got his calling from, in my opinion. Okay. I yield.
Very true.
That's
Thank you.
perfect. That's perfect.
Thank you, Bernice.
So once more, and to virtue, knowledge, and to knowledge, self-control, and to self-control, perseverance.
And all that leads to wisdom. And Proverbs is all about wisdom, you know?
Yep. Yep. So, Darlene, you may not be able to speak. Can you nod your head or are you able to offer any words? Our Darlene is written seeking higher truths.
And you know, when you look at what Nikki said, look at how Peter lined that up. You got to have a sequence of how it is used in order to get the wisdom and the knowledge that you need.
Indeed.
Stuart, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I apologize. I have a loud environment, but as I understand the difference between apostrophia and apostrophe, is much like seeing a map written, drawn out on a page or drawn out on a flat surface, and the topography of the earth itself. So in that regard, I understand that apostrophia is actually the beingness of the reality, the real world, as you would say, Stuart. Whereas apostrophe is an attempt to address that in the physical world as we know it.
Yes, and once again, I think the point being here, friends, that we relate differently to a text. As Queen Mother said, I don't think she used word intellectual, but that's what she was saying. It can become just one-sided, a purely mental consideration, as opposed to if we go back to the source, the original source, the inspiration, something different is asked of us, is it not? I think, for instance, I was reading remarkable visions of the stigmata and Catherine Emmerich, and she described through her visions the experience of three of the disciples, Peter, James the Greater, and John, of the Transfiguration. And it was very, very moving that in the presence of these spiritual beings that occurred during the Transfiguration, they're absolutely overwhelmed, deeply, deeply, deeply touched. And that imagine that, contrast that from just reading the scriptures to being in the actual presence, which raises the question, what is asked of us if we can connect with Anthroposophia? What is asked from us?
There's two parts of this question, if I may, that also interest me that we haven't brought up, but I think they're really relevant, especially since we're Americans asking these questions. And one thing is that Steiner mentioned in the lecture about midway through his life there. It's called a contemplation of a Christmas contemplation of the Vitae Sophia. And in that lecture, he makes this statement. He says, when feeling life so transforms, Anthroposophia becomes Vitae Sophia. So the wisdom of the human being and in the human being's quest to unite with this realm of human wisdom, when through the feeling life, there's a marked transformation, then that feeling life awakens life wisdom. Now that's one part of what I wanted to
Vita Sophia.
Vitae is life wisdom. Vitae Sophia. It's Latin. Another point in his work later on, he makes reference to that there's a fundamental difference between, as he says, this is a quote, European anthroposophical spiritual science. He makes that term. And then he says, in America, something similar to European anthroposophical spiritual science lives naturally in the people of America. Except for in 1923, when he said this, he said, this other form of wisdom that the Americans have is still woody and asleep, largely. But in time, they will awaken to this, their own calling, and what they bring forth will not sound the same, but it'll be essentially the same and complementary to European anthroposophical spiritual science. And so for me, these questions about we find our way to Rudolf Steiner, it's important to understand that he brings it into Central European orientation to begin with. But as you go into the substance of what he's bringing, the substance of that leads to the gift is for the whole world and all cultures. It's not for this. It's not just for the European culture. And then he will give indications about the gifts of the different peoples of the world and the different mystery centers and so on. So it's quite a bit that one is contained in this whole realm of anthroposophy. But I think for us, these questions, as we try to find a relationship to anthroposophy and anthroposophia, it's so important to appreciate that Rudolf Steiner is guiding us as Americans to the fact that really, in the transformation of our feeling life, especially, not our thinking life, anthroposophy is the cultivation of thinking life, really. The cultivation of feeling life, which we are in a certain way more inclined to culturally, I believe, and since we are such a diversity of so many kinds of people, we relate socially, culturally, we encounter ourselves in the different so radically. We don't have a uniform culture, and so our challenges in our feeling life, and to come to terms with how to harmonize our relationships through the feeling life. And when we take that up and do that, then we come into this realm of life wisdom. You see, I believe we're meant to be finding expression for this life wisdom that's natural to us. And I think that, I think that's exactly what Stuart's task has been, to be this American who goes around and tries to bring people together to come to realize that we have access to a slumbering spiritual wisdom that is right there. And we feel it sometimes instinctively, but then together we can share it in different ways. And then gradually it actually wakes up to a living impulse. We feel that in the club, and we see that. And in our various subcultures in our in our culture, we begin to feel and see that historically, how to the African American certain quality comes to the Mexican American and the Anglo American. Every different type of us is, we're all human beings. We're finding our way to a practical love and a way of harmonizing our relationship, which opens up then a kind of a life wisdom. And we begin to have our own language for it. It doesn't sound anything like a European construct. It doesn't just sometimes sound even educated, except it's so wise that it's convincing. And so I think it's really important to tie these elements together in a more living way now, because this is what we're called to do, I believe.
Thank you, Steve, very, very much. Thank you. What Queen Mother do you hear in Steve's words? Can you hear us, Queen Mother?
I'm trying to get it unmuted. What I hear is that we have to decide through our thoughts whether or not we're going to continue in an old way, or we're going to take up the enlightened way, the new path of knowledge as we go forth. And like Stein did, Stein was always seeking for the new path in order to have more wisdom, more knowledge, and more understanding of all of the things that was around him and his pathway to the other side. He had these feelings that was unexplainable. It was just not explainable to the ordinary person. The ordinary person would feel, oh, he's crazy, or what's going on with him, or they would say some of these derogatory things, but they didn't realize that God had given him a new path of thinking. He didn't think like the ordinary person did. He took note of all of the things that was around him and used that knowledge that he gained from the earth, from the trees, from the birds, the bees, from the insects. He used that knowledge to enhance his thinking.
Indeed. Indeed. Other comments, friends?
So, Stuart, what I'm thinking is what Kianda brought when she offered that it's really important the being that's behind the body of knowledge that we're discovering, talking about, connecting with. So it's pretty significant to think about Anthroposophia and the word Anthroposophy when we talk about that body of knowledge. And that's kind of connected to what Queen Mother was saying, that, yeah, why this wisdom is so important to be aware of and understand and talk about and make sure we're connecting with the being of Anthroposophia and not another being that that isn't beneficial, something like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so here we come again.
really, for me, it's a connection. For me, it's a connection to my inner being. I don't know. Maybe I don't know quite how to say it. But it's I don't know whether you call it self evaluation or what. It's a connection to my inner being because I am very acutely aware of things that go on around me, even with other people. Not only with myself, but with other people. And more especially if I'm out walking on my land, I'm constantly aware of, that wasn't there yesterday. What is that? You know, how did that get there? Even though I'm asking those questions, God don't have to answer. I learned that. I learned God do not have to answer because He give us that forward thinking that eventually we'll figure it out. And that's the acute awareness within yourself.
Thank you. Tito, Andrew, any comments from your sides? Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes, I'm in a very loud place. I can now hear you. There's a helicopter circling above, so sometimes I can't. So I can listen, but I cannot participate fully at the moment.
Thank you, Andrew. Tito, anything you would like to say? Did you hear us, Tito? So Darlene has just offered a comment. She said, being present and aware of subtle bodies of information that
Yes, I hear.
comes through the ethereal realms. Do you want to, Darlene, do you want to elaborate on that? Or? I could call you and bring you in. I will call you and bring you in.
Well, why are you calling him? I keep going back to, if you look on page 12 of the friend, I keep going back to that section where it says, the reality of the spirit world was as certain to the young child as that of the physical world around him. What he required, however, was a clear justification for his experience that could be understood by others, as opposed to immediately dismissed as he had been in the case with his aunt. Now, that's what I'm talking about. You have to be, people that they call people that have sixth sense, people that have a higher reference to other things. They call mentally ill or crazy or whatever. This is how it is. Because this is how it is with me. The reality of the spiritual world was certain to the young child as that of the physical world around him. I'm very aware of the physical world that around me. And I respect that physical world that God always has within me. But what I require is for people to understand that I don't have to be just like them. That my worlds are just as real to me as theirs are to them. And it's much more beneficial. Much more beneficial.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Vito, you were beginning to say something. Do you wish to offer any thoughts?
Not really, but I think about what you shared at the beginning of the convocation. So the difference between Anthroposophy and Anthroposophia. So I reflect about that, and I really appreciate the response that I find because like you said, Anthroposophy is can can be considered like the knowledge, the body, but Anthroposophia like the inspiration, the source. So so we can say we have to inspire to the Anthroposophia to live or to know to find the Anthroposophy. So because you see, if you consider Anthroposophy like the knowledge, like spiritual thing and so on, so this is my thought about that.
Thank you, Vito. Thank you. In one way, friends, one could say that we can study anthroposophy based on our intellect. But if we want to grasp Anthroposophia, we have to transform our intellect into imaginative or clairvoyant experience, inspirative or clairaudient experiences, and intuitive or clairsentient experiences, that we're transcending the narrow realm of the intellect and we are enlivening our faculties so that it can meet life, this remarkable life of the spirit. And that transformation, I might add, has a very distinct moral aspect to it. And I wonder, Steve, if you care to speak to that. Are you able to hear us, Steve? Any comments?
Yeah, I hear you, Stuart. Thank you. I had to figure out how to unmute myself. Well, you've made reference in some of these past gatherings, especially ones fairly recently, that there's a law in a certain way that says that for every step of spiritual knowledge, the seeker must cultivate 3 steps of moral development. And I think that very simple, abstract way of expressing a law speaks to something so profound. I think that this realm of what is moral, I believe, has very much to do with the realm of conscience as a form of, as an organ, the cultivation of conscience as an organ of moral cognition. So there's a power we have within us that is a source of awakening to the spiritual substance of what is moral, and that is our conscience. But mostly, our conscience is woody and asleep. It's not yet raised to the level of a consciousness of conscience. Conscience is kind of an impulse that moves into us instinctively as good and evil. We can all feel that. It can be very instinctive and still be our conscience. But then to actually cultivate the soul through making the demand of oneself to become virtuous, and there's 12 virtues. So I think the whole realm of the virtues and the cultivation of the virtues takes us into the realm of what is moral. And so a science of nature quite different than a science of the moral realm. And one can go, there's quite a bit that can be opened up here. So it's a whole nother step that it's interesting. The last thing I'd say, I was listening to a reading of one of Steiner's descriptions of the practices in the School for Spiritual Science when he was first bringing it forward. And he made the comment, there's no spiritual knowledge without a cultivation of virtues. And the virtues are cultivated in the human heart. And I felt that just was such a simple way of putting something that's so profound. And I think this is the realm that is our hidden gift in America. I think we are meant to be, Thoreau speaks about this, we're meant to be communities of noble, not aristocratic noble, but people of noble character. Martin Luther King spoke about that, the measurement, and to measure a person by the quality of the character. And so I think this is a really fruitful area that we want to bring consciousness to. So in a sense, I think we're being called to bring a kind of full consciousness of the power of conscience. And that's our power, that's our fire, and that's our gift, and that's our calling, I believe.
Essential. And in a way, it's as simple as what could be more all-American than the 4-H club, head, heart, hands, balanced, working together equals health. We had a wonderful contributions from a colleague in Tuskegee the other evening, and he spoke about how education for Booker T. Washington was knowledge, and our thinking was character, and our feeling, and then developing skills, serviceable skills in our will. Head, heart, hands, balanced, working together equals health. What could be simpler and more profound? We got some background noise, friends. We got some background noise. Is that Andrew? Is that you? Thank you. Have you been sending more chats, Nikki? Any thoughts you wish to add?
Where my brain is going with all this is the only one we can change is ourselves. We have to recognize everything that you said, but we're the only ones who can change how everything is, going in the country or the world for that matter. And so keep it up. Doing well.
To make it real. Make it real.
Right. And for oneself, and others will follow eventually.
What is interesting, friends, is that Rudolf Steiner, he grew up in a Catholic family, but his father wasn't very observant. And I'm not sure his mother was particularly either. But he was an altar boy and he attended the services. But his path was, he had these spiritual gifts, but his path was one more of the sciences. And yet, the decisive moment in his life, perhaps Steve, you could speak to this a bit along with me, was his experience of the Christ. And that became the very center of the work of Anthroposophy. I think he spoke of a great festival of knowledge through these revelations that he was given of the Christ. Thus, one could speak of him as some have spoken of him as the Christian of the Christ initiate of the 20th century, who was bringing us this new festival of knowledge about the reality, the divinity of the Christ. Not just doctrines and dogmas, but an actual spirit presence. God is, not was. He speaks, not speaketh. Well, friends, maybe given the hour, we're after the hour. Maybe we can take this as a beginning. We'll have 2 more days in which we'll go into this at greater length. I had some notes on my computer which I can't get open, so I'll be glad to share them the next days with some quotations by friend Rudolf Steiner about the difference between Anthroposophy and Anthroposophia. So let's go around the circle and invite any concluding comments people may have. Charlene, from your side.
Start.
Yeah, Vito.
Anthroposophy and Anthroposophia, as Rudolf Steiner mentioned both in his work.
Yes. Yes, and he spoke to the difference between them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you for being part of it, for finding our way into this theme. I think it's an important one. whether we're connected just with the body of knowledge, teachings, or whether we're able to unite with the spirit behind it. I think it's really essential. Darlene, anything from the chat you wish to share? There needs to be more brotherly love from the heart to truly connect to one another. Once again, there needs to be more brotherly and one adds sisterly love from the heart to truly connect with one another. Thank you. Nikki, any final thoughts from your side? Any concluding thoughts?
No, I appreciate what you're doing, though, your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Andrew, from your side?
No, I'm still in a loud environment, but thanks for allowing me to participate. I look forward to finding ways we can share this with a wider audience, not just this event, but the previous events and the upcoming events. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So finally, Steve, and then maybe Queen Mother can give us a concluding prayer. Steve, anything you wish to add?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that's actually most inspirational for me is to listen to everybody. And then Stuart always has a way of asking me questions. It's always a challenge for me because most of what lives in me lives way down deep into me. And when I try to bring it up, it's difficult because it's the result of decades of my own modest striving, and which comes a little bit at a time. And so I appreciate the opportunity to try to find words for what I'm trying to share. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Steve. But I think what I would say before inviting Queen Mother to offer some final thoughts and then a prayer is that to work effectively in the world, we have to have a working relationship with the mineral kingdom, whether we are in the business of building, of cement or bricks or whatever. We need an understanding of the plant realm, whether it's gardening or basically remedies or herbs. We need an understanding of the animal realm, particularly in earlier days when horses and buggies were the vogue. And of course, we need an understanding in one of the most challenging realms, which is the human realm. That's the visible realm. But as I think we all are aware, on the color spectrum, there is the invisible aspects of the spectrum on the ultraviolet and infrared ends of the color spectrum. And so what I'm saying is, I think for us to also work effectively in the world, we need to follow from the mineral, plant, animal, and human realms. We need to learn how to work with the angelic realms and the archangelic realms and the hierarchies. And that becomes when we can find the peace and the quiet and the centeredness that far transcends matters of the intellect. We're dealing with beings, we're dealing with essences, we're dealing with things that are much, much more real than what we otherwise learned in our schools. So our studies and our learning takes on, in the fullest sense of the word, an existential dimension about the reality of existence. And also we become more responsible. We can become more responsible because it's a more full-fledged undertaking, work that we undertake in service to other realms that are all but invisible. So I would offer that, friends, from my side. And Queen Mother, if you have any final thoughts or wish to offer a prayer, that would be wonderful.
My final thought is if we can all give brotherly love and kindness, we will fulfill the necessary need for all of the rest. Now may we clear our minds. Father God, as we come before you, realizing that we don't know all, don't understand all, and sometimes we can't even speak in a manner that makes sense to others, but we realize that you are God and that we put our faith and our trust in you, knowing that you knows what's best, knowing that you will teach us if we are willing to follow, knowing that you will keep us under the shadows of your wings from hurt, harm, or danger. So therefore we submit ourselves unto you because we believe in you and we put our trust in you, knowing that you will teach us what we need to know. And may we share that knowledge with others generously in order that they may realize that not only do you love them, but that we love them also. So give us strength, give us wisdom, give us understanding, courage, and the ability to assimilate it in a manner that is pleasing to you. We ask this in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
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 The recording has stopped.
Thank you, friends. I'm sorry for our rough start with the technical aspects, but I'm grateful for the conversation we're able to have to carrying this thread on. And we convene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. So 8 Central, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific, and then tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you very much, one and all.
Thanks to all. Stuart, let's talk tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. We'll talk tomorrow if that's okay with you.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, have a good evening to all. Much love.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good night.